Good afternoon from Manila. My name is Werner Liepach, and I am the Director General of the Central West Asia Regional Department of the Asian Development Bank. Welcome to the Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation Program high-level session during the ADB's 53rd Annual General Meeting. I hope you have already chosen your language interpretation of choice. We have either Russian and English, and you're all settled in by now for what I believe will be a very exciting session ahead. Before we get started, I would like to first recognize CAREC's host government for this year and our co-chair for today, the Honorable Abdul Hadi Agandiwal, Governor of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan in the Asian Development Bank and Acting Minister of Finance. I'm also pleased to welcome our Vice President for Operations 1 in the ADB, Mr. Xixin Chen. To help inform and facilitate our discussion today, we have with us Mr. Peter Frankopan, renowned professor of global history, Worcester College, University of Oxford, and Peter has written extensively on the history of the Silk Road and regional international cooperation through ages. So very glad to have you here, Peter. I also would like to recognize each of our valuable CAREC member countries who have taken time out of their very busy schedules to join and enlighten us today, and with their thoughts on regional cooperation in the current challenging situations, as well as the challenges for the joint future. For now, we have with us from Azerbaijan, Mr. Samir Sharifov, Governor of the Republic of Azerbaijan in the ADB, and Minister of Finance, as well as Mr. Rovshan Najaf, Deputy Minister in the Ministry of Economy in Azerbaijan and CAREC National Focal Point. From the People's Republic of China, we have Mr. Liu Weihua, Deputy Director General of the International Department in the Ministry of Finance and CAREC National Focal Point. From Georgia, we have Ms. Ekaterine Mikabadze, First Deputy Minister, Ministry of Economy and Sustainable Development of Georgia. From Kazakhstan, I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Shazlan Madiev, Vice Minister in the Ministry of National Economy and CAREC National Focal Point, as well as Mr. Nurlan Shokparpayev, Director of the Investment Policy Department in the Ministry of National Economy. From the Kyrgyz Republic, we have Mr. Sultan Akhmatov, Deputy Minister of Economy, Ministry of Economy and CAREC National Focal Point. From Mongolia, I welcome Mr. We got a little change there in Mongolia, actually. The minister was supposed to be, but it has been replaced. So we have here from Mongolia, Mr. Baktu Idesh, Director General of the Ministry of Finance and National Focal Point. From Pakistan, we have Mr. Noor Ahmed, Secretary in the Ministry of Economic Affairs, as well as Mr. Isaz Aslam Dar, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Economic Affairs and CAREC National Focal Point. From Tajikistan, I welcome Mr. Nematullo Hikmatullo-Sada, Assistant to the President of Tajikistan and on economic issues and CAREC National Focal Point. In Turkmenistan, delegation is led by Mr. Rovshan Nuratyev, Deputy Minister in the Ministry of Finance and Economy. And we also expect Mr. Serdar Umarsakov, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Investments and Foreign Trade from Uzbekistan, who will be joining us later during the discussion. Again, thank you everybody for being with us today. And with this, allow me now to pass on the floor to Mr. Xixin Chen, Vice President Operations 1, to deliver the welcome remarks. Mr. Chen, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, DG Werner. Honorable ministers, heads of delegations, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good day for all of us. I'm pleased to be part of this very timely discussion. The year 2020 marks the 20th anniversary of the CAREC program. Over the past 2 decades, CAREC's membership has been expanded to 11 countries. Working together with development partners, CAREC promotes progress through cooperation, resource mobilization, knowledge sharing, driving accelerated economic growth and poverty reduction. At the same time, 2020 has been the most challenging year for the region. The rapid spread of the COVID-19 has manifested as the worst pandemic in a century and poses an unprecedented threat to both public health and the regional economy. The impact is being felt strongly across developing Asia, with a sharply reduced growth forecast of merely 0.1% in 2020. We could see as many as 56 million people falling back into extreme poverty. In the CAREC region, excluding PRC, we expected economic activity to contract by 1.3% due to the trade and travel disruptions, low oil prices, and the loss of remittances. To help governments cope with the impact of the pandemic, ADB launched a $20 billion pandemic response package and approved around $2.8 billion immediate assistance to the CAREC region to help contain the spread of the pandemic, deliver economic stimulus, ensure social protection, and support MSMEs. Moving ahead, given the magnitude of the impact caused by the pandemic, it is now the time that we need regional cooperation more than ever. We believe the stronger solidarity and the collective actions are the core for us to conquer the crisis. Taking this chance, let me share with you 4 thoughts in terms of regional cooperation in the future. First, to build a more resilient regional public health system, there are many areas could be further improved. For instance, strengthening regional integrated disease surveillance networks, establishing coordinator mechanisms to slow the spread of the virus across borders, harmonizing health protocols and standards among countries, and exploring poor procurement mechanisms for vaccines. Second, to support regional economic revitalization. We think the regional cooperation can help greatly overcome the barriers in the regional connectivity, cross-border trade and tourism, FDI and remittance inflows, as well as digitalization. Third, to facilitate the policy coordination and knowledge sharing to address common health diseases, cross-border economic enhancement, regional policy coordination, and to share experiences and lessons. We believe working together by taking joint actions can make big difference. Fourth, to explore the potential for inter-regional cooperation. The widespread COVID-19 has demonstrated that the necessity of our cooperation should go beyond sub-regions. CAREC, GMS, SASEC must be further integrated to amplify the synergy of the regional cooperation. To this end, I'd like to highly commend the high-level participation in today's meeting. I trust the know-how for coping with COVID-19 will be shared in this meeting. Special thanks to Professor Peter Frankopan, the great writer of the fantastic book, The New Silk Road, which helps us to grasp the historical value of the regional cooperation and reflects as the spirit for the future. I also hope today's discussion will add the momentum to our upcoming CAREC Ministerial Conference for a further strategic discussion. With that, thank you. Now, I have the pleasure to call on the governor for the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan in ADB, Mr. Hadi Agendivar, to deliver his opening remarks.
Excellency ministers and head of delegations from CAREC members country, Excellency Mr. Chen, Vice President of the Asian Development Bank, esteemed moderator, Professor Franco Pan, and Director General, representative of development partners, organizations, respectable participants. Assalamu alaikum, and good day to everyone. It's my distinct pleasure to be here with you virtually today for CAREC, high-level session during the annual general meeting. First, on behalf of the Afghan government, I would like to thank the Asian Development Bank in CAREC for hosting this event and selecting a theme that is most relevant in current circumstances. I would also like to express my sincere appreciation for the work carried out by the Asian Development Bank, other international development partners, and CAREC program in the helping to unlock the prosperity potential of all people living in the region, as well as the support provided during COVID-19 pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, Central Asia and South Asia are dynamic and fast-growing region. Over the past decades, it has become clear that enhanced regional cooperation is crucial to achieving growth and prosperity. Regional cooperation is one of the 5 pillars of Afghanistan's development agenda toward harmonized development in the key priority area. At the heart of this plan is the belief that private sector lead economic growth and strengthening regional economic cooperation will bring us closer, providing financial, social, economic, and political and security benefits for the entire region. Thus, we have faith that the regional cooperation can provide a platform for our interests to converge, where we can build confidence and provide incentive for peace and prosperity. The COVID-19 pandemic severely affected the CAREC region. It's plunged our interconnected world into turmoil by disrupting our normal modern modes of conduct and forms of sociability. With the further uncertainty characterizing the COVID-19 effect across the world, we may never comprehend its complexity, but are likely to remember history as before and after the COVID-19. The COVID-19 has wreaked havoc on lives and livelihood and poses an unparalleled challenge to our scientific capabilities and medical professionals. Therefore, the scale and scope of its disruptive and destructive effect required us to confront turmoil through robust collective actions for nurturing solidarity, strengthening our bonds of citizenship, and pursuing risk response strategies of cooperative advantage in regional and international relations. We stand united in the sympathy and solidarity with the victims of COVID-19 across the world. Offer deep appreciation for the medical professions and their heroic efforts and support to effort the global scientific community to win the race against COVID-19 and developing a vaccine. To stand united against the potential risk of shared concern in the region, like the COVID-19 pandemic, presently, the only option of choice will be regional cooperation. By this approach, we can develop joint and coordinated risk response strategies and can do the same for exploiting the shared opportunities in the region. This is why regional cooperation programs such as CAREC are even more relevant than before to provide a platform to coordinate regional action and response strategies. Our calling as a public servant and our duty as the government make it imperative to think beyond the pain of the moment and to create the necessary alignment at the local and global level to meet the expectations of our fellow human being for providing relief and recovery, as well as ushering of normalcy. Regional cooperation and collective action against regional risk are key in fighting against poverty, corruption, hunger, deprivation, inequality, and instability in the region. You can count on Afghanistan as the chair of CAREC for 2020. We are committed to all types of contribution needed in regional and international cooperation. And we believe that only through our joint work, we will be able to marshal the true sense of urgency in overcoming all the challenges of the regional concern, especially the COVID-19. Once again, thank you, and I look forward to a thoughtful discussion today and hearing your view and ideas on promoting cooperation for mutual development. I thank you.
Mr. Lipach, your mic is off.
Well, thank you very much, Director General Lipak. My name is Peter Frankopan. It's
That's the problem with these things. I apologize. So Peter, thanks again. Sorry for that. I was calling on you, and you take the floor already. So please go ahead, and thank you again, Mr. Agadiwal, for your greetings and opening remarks. Peter, over to you.
Thank you, DG Lipak. I think this is one of the new things of the 21st century, is mastering the new technology that all of us have still some way to go. But anyway, it's a pleasure to be joining you virtually. I'm sorry we're not meeting in person. These meetings are incredibly important to give an opportunity to exchange views and to work through problems. My name is Peter Frankopan. I'm Professor of Global History at Oxford University, and it's a great honor and a privilege to be here with the Asian Development Bank at its annual meeting to talk through some pragmatic and practical ways that we will hope to improve cross-border collaboration, cooperation, and find ways to intensify links across through CAREC states. I'm really looking forward to the discussion that we're going to have. But first, I thought it would be helpful to just have a brief overview from both a historical perspective and also to put where we are today in the wider context of issues about regional cooperation, globalization, and so on. Clearly, before COVID started, the world was going through a period of profound integration across Asia in particular, where in CAREC's own 2017 endorsed ministerial conference paper on good neighbours, good partners, and good prospects, the aim to try to intensify relationships between neighbors and an entire neighborhood. COVID has put these kinds of ties under enormous pressure. We've already heard from VP Chen some of the economic challenges that we face, but sometimes crises can also bring opportunities. And COVID, on the silver lining of a cloud, gives the opportunity, I think, to revisit how to work better together and how to move forward through some of the issues around border crossing times, mutual infrastructure investments, and to find ways of going forwards together. So I hope that the discussion today will lead on to some pragmatic steps to bring down some of the barriers and to increase those kinds of cooperations. Of course, all of you from this region know very well, better than I, how important cross-border collaboration has been in the past. The networks that span across the spine of Asia for the last 150 years or so have been known as the Silk Roads, but all of the CAREC member states have very long and extensive links with each other that explain why Asia, for a much greater part of human history than the last few hundred years maybe suggest, was the most important, most populated, most economically vibrant part of the world. And although we sometimes pay attention through the tourist catalogues to the monuments and the buildings, the reasons why Asia and CAREC state territories were so important was precisely because governments and leaders in the past paid attention to finding ways to invigorate long distance and short distance trade. And that meant investment in roads, investment into bridges, investment into trading facilities, investment into legal systems that provided the correct level of tax systems and tax take in order to generate the right level of tax revenues from trade of goods, and so on. Exactly the same kinds of questions that we are thinking about today. And I think it's important to remember how strong that cooperation has been over many centuries. The invigoration of agriculture, the building of monuments, and the cultural flourishings of CAREC states is something that it's useful to turn back to in the past, to try to think about how it was that integration was played a role in past centuries and past millennia. When we look back, of course, at the past, transmission of goods and the movement of people, of languages, cultures, religions, the way we move and travel, as COVID reminds us, doesn't just mean that we bring expensive value items and foodstuffs and needs that we need every day. We also bring pathogens and spread them through exactly the same networks. COVID spread as a result of above all, our airline connections, but even within specific regions and cities, studies done the last few months have shown how important subway, metro, train, and transport links were in spreading the pathogen through individual countries. Because when we move around, we learn from each other, but we can also have inadvertent and unforeseen consequences. As it happens, the single most important and significant pandemic in global history, the Black Death in the 1340s, that rose as plague from the Tibetan Qinghai Plateau through Central Asia, followed exactly the same process. And exactly the same happened 700 years ago. To stop the spread of disease and pandemic, you have to stop people moving, because that's the way to prevent people from infecting each other. So I think it's an important point that VP Chen made at the beginning of this meeting, that CAREC can play a very important role with the ADB in improving healthcare systems, improving the spread and flow of information, both about prevention and spread of disease, but also in their resolutions. And one of the themes, I think, of this year has been the global cooperation between pharmaceutical companies to try to work together to find a vaccine that will allow us all to resume our life as it was. But clearly the pandemic has put intense pressure on individual states in different magnitudes, but also on the region as a whole. And VP Chen mentioned some of those figures in terms of the impact on the GDP. But I think there are still opportunities that this gives to really focus the minds on stimulating and galvanizing trades, because close regional ties are important anyway, but they're particularly important in times of crisis. And in the case of CAREC countries and their very famous pasts, we see the entire region performs in the same kind of way. Everybody does well, or nobody does. So that focus on macroeconomic policy, on national security, on data standards, pharmaceutical norms are all part of the discussion today, and I hope going forwards as well. I thought it's briefly also important to push back a little bit on the issues around globalization, because right now, particularly in Europe and in the West, there is a lot of discussion about the negative sides of globalization. And in some cases, the pandemic is seen as one of the problems of the fact that we are all more closely connected. But despite the fact that there are very significant trade tensions in some parts of the world, despite the fact that there is a lot of commentary about the negative impacts of globalization and attempts to decouple, to remove supply chains, etc., in fact, the evidence suggests that exactly the opposite is really happening. In fact, the last 30 years have seen profound and very important improvements and strengthenings of regional cooperation groups. And just in the last couple of years, there's been a very important new free trade area set up in Africa, a reinvigoration of the United States, Mexico, Canada agreement, used to be known as NAFTA, and of course, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership and the Comprehensive Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership that really tries to find a way of connecting us all more closely together. So regional and global trade is in fact strengthening, despite the fact that there are important questions to work out how to balance these kinds of the benefits to individual members and to individual regions. So as you all have seen in the annual report of the CAREC Corridor Measurement and Monitoring Progress Report for 2019, there have been some very significant improvements across CAREC states, particularly around rail transport and average road transport costs. But the border crossing times, those kinds of infrastructure costs, are ones that can be brought down very dramatically with some concerted action. And I urge all of you in the member states, individually and collectively, to really think hard about whether there are ways now to harmonize some of these standards and to really think hard about how we can improve some of those gains that will flow very quickly from bringing down border crossing times from 12, 13, 14 hours, even if down by 10, 15 or 20%, where the costs of capital, the flows of goods, the impacts on vegetables and so on and foodstuffs can be very dramatic indeed. And I think the ADB is very keen to hear from your perspectives about pragmatic and practical ways in which we can help facilitate that going forward. Clearly, COVID gives important urgency to that need for cooperation around disease prevention and mitigation. And again, that's a key area of focus for the ADB going forward. So I think there are many different angles and avenues to explore, both in today's meeting and beyond. So I think it would be helpful to turn to member states with their questions. I should say beforehand that those who are listening online, there is a Pigeonhole Live facility for Q&A. We'll try to take some questions from the general public and viewers who are joining us a little bit later, and you can vote also on the submitted questions to individual states or to the group as a whole, and we'll do our best to answer at least some of those. But I think the most useful part of today's meeting will be hearing from member states themselves. So I think the first person I'd like to turn to is to Minister Argani Diwal, who spoke just before me, to ask around some of the questions exactly on how CAREC can be helpful or more helpful. So Minister Argani Diwal, could you please give your thoughts on how you think CAREC countries can work with each other to promote this intensification of trade and improve transport speeds, to reduce those border delays and achieve some cost savings? Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. CAREC strategy on 2030, endorsed by the member of countries, has laid out the board directions for cooperation in key area, covering the aspect you have mentioned. Detailed sector strategies are also prepared, including CAREC Integrated Trade Agenda, Transport Strategy 2030, in Energy Strategy 2030 and identify specific action in terms of policies and their implementation. What we need now is an understanding of our roles, putting our energies and head together to work toward the agreed goal effectively and precisely. Trade movement of goods across the border is our landlocked region, and transport links are crucial for our survival and development. Other than our openness and willingness to work with each other, I feel adopting digital technology, especially during the pandemic, could be part of the answer and solution. Efforts toward infrastructure connectivity will need to continue, but digital connectivity is a key obstacle that we need to hurdle to ensure seamless flows across border. Some of the initial steps have been taken in this regard, like CAREC Advanced Transit System and information common exchange. We will need to speed these up and pursue the other related initiatives. E-commerce has exercised a huge boom because of travel restriction and other control measures. Potential digital transformation dividends for the CAREC region have been projected at 9.3% of GDP by 2025 and 18.9% by 2030. This can only be realized through digitalization and continued improvement in logistics and cross-border flows. We will need to continue our key project to improve connectivity with the neighboring and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I wonder if we might turn to Minister Sharif of the Republic of Azerbaijan for some comments. A question I'd like to ask from the Azerbaijani delegation is about what the key challenges and opportunities are for CAREC member states, and perhaps give us some guidance on how CAREC might help overcome some of these challenges and take advantage of the opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everybody. Honorable Mr. Shichin, ADB Vice President, Governor Hadi Arkan Dival, Governor for the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, honorable ministers and participants of today's session. Director General Lipach, first of all, I would like to commend the efforts of the Asian Development Bank to conduct such an important session to address the issues of regional cooperation in the region of CAREC under such a challenging, let's say, period of time. The COVID-19 pandemic has has been exerting unprecedented blow on the economic development, on trade flows, as well as challenging health and social security systems worldwide. And our region is not an exception. So therefore, today, each country of the region is finding the most efficient ways to combat the pandemic and to take necessary steps to, first of all, ensure the health and lives of its people. So, therefore, today, of course, the issues of economic development and trade flows, they're maybe not at the first front of the issues which we are addressing. However, I would like to state in this regard that so we commend that the initiative of ADB to conduct such a discussion within CAREC member states, because today, of course, we are living through the crisis, but as it was said already, each crisis also creates enormous opportunities. So therefore, we have to grasp these opportunities on the basis of the thorough analysis of where we are. Of course, I believe that deliberations during this session, they will be important, and they may be later on used by ADB in offering certain strategies for the economies of the region. So in this regard. So the CAREC initiative, which is an initiative of 11 countries and supported by our development partners, in particular, Asian Development Bank has been a staunch supporter of the initiative and has mobilized substantial resources to support the projects which were implemented under CAREC umbrella. So we very much hope here in Azerbaijan that during such challenging times, we can find also ways to promote trade in the region. So even under such difficult and unprecedented conditions. My colleague, Deputy Minister of Economy of Azerbaijan, Mr. Rovshan Najaf, is also taking part in the work of this webinar. So I believe that he will elaborate more on details of how we view these cooperation opportunities within the CAREC framework later during this session. Once again, I would like to thank Vice President Chen and senior management of ADB for organizing this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Sharifov. And I will come back to Deputy Minister Najaf in due course. But I'd like to hear from Li Weihua from the People's Republic of China, perhaps with some ideas also about what the key challenges and opportunities as he sees it for CAREC. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Vice President Su Chen, honorable ministers, esteemed Professor Peter Frank Pan, distinguished delegation from member countries, dear colleagues from ADB, good afternoon. Firstly, China would like to join other countries to thank the ADB for hosting such an important event for us to discuss how to further enhance regional cooperation at the time of COVID-19. We believe that such kind of discussion is very timely and is very relevant for further, international, regional cooperation. As we all know that COVID-19 pandemic has raged across the world, threatening severely the health of people and playing tremendous havoc with economy in the region. Now it's imperative for all the countries in the world, particularly the CAREC countries, to take some actions to counter such kind of challenges and the risks going forward. The pandemic shows again that the destiny of all mankind is connected. Countries in the world are independent to each other. Therefore, only joint efforts guided by multinationalism globalization, free trade and investment can overcome the difficulties. The past experiences has already demonstrated that CAREC is a very good platform for us to address common challenges and risks and to realize economic prosperity and common development. Going forward, we hope that through CAREC mechanism, this sub-region can find solutions to further advance concrete actions to overcoming this global emergency and lay the foundations for a more sustainable, resilient, and inclusive post-COVID-19 future. So China would like to take this occasion to propose 3 suggestions in this regard. First, China hopes CAREC as a regional multilateral platform bring together all its member countries to enhance consensus and build confidence, steadfastly upholding economic globalization and multilateralism, especially given the slowdown of global economic growth and the current trend of uprising unilateralism and protectionism. CAREC should give full play to its role of macro policy coordination and call for all member countries to jointly uphold the banner of regional cooperation and integration and facilitate free and open global trade and investment. Second, we hope CAREC foster new drives of economic growth in the CAREC region through investment projects, particularly through economic corridor construction. In the post-pandemic era, CAREC countries are likely to see relatively slow economic growth, as well as the decline of supply and demand. Therefore, CAREC can speed up the transport economic corridor construction and on the basis of infrastructure projects, strengthen high technology cooperation, such as digital economy. This can unlock the potential of cross-border investment and trade, as well as facilitate economic cooperation based on every country's comparative advantage, so as to make the regional economy flourish. Third, we hope CAREC promote its member countries' risk management capability, such as addressing pandemic and natural disasters. On the one hand, CAREC can encourage its member countries to spread diagnosis and therapy experience, share research data and information, carry out cooperation on medicine and vaccine research and development, thus jointly safeguarding the public health in the region. On the other hand, CAREC can establish disaster addressing mechanism. Whenever pandemic or natural disaster emerge, CAREC countries can in the first time provide financial and technical support to the member countries to tide them over. Now, CAREC Disaster Risk Transfer Facility is on its way to the establishment, which in our view is a good attempt in this regard. Thank you. Over.
Thank you very much. I should point out that on Pigeonhole Live, if you'd like to submit questions in either English or Chinese or Russian, that would be excellent. Thank you very much. I'd like to call on First Deputy Minister Mikabidze from Georgia, please, to comment on the ways in which Georgia sees the key challenges and opportunities for CAREC member states, please. Deputy Minister.
Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, honorable ministers, heads of delegations, representatives of the Asian Development Bank and CAREC Secretariat, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to be part of this CAREC high-level session dedicated to the regional cooperation in the time of COVID-19. Even though there is a tendency of gradual easing of economic restrictions around the world, there is a higher than usual degree of uncertainty around the global development. The COVID-19 global and CAREC member countries, of course, do not represent the exception. Economic recovery, in the region, especially in China, will positively affect the development in other members as well. However, significant supply and demand shocks will lead to the contraction of economic activity in this year. Besides, the oil price decrease represents the additional source of negative impact for our oil exporting member countries. I would like to underline the importance of joint efforts of policy coordination among CAREC member countries to address the challenges in the post-COVID world and continue the path of regional integration. There is no doubt that global economy and international system will reshape after the coronavirus pandemic, and countries need to find better balance between taking advantage of globalization and necessary degree of self-reliance. Some tendencies of transformation can be already observed. Countries try to strengthen their manufacturing sectors, ensure security of supply chain system, and support agricultural production. In this pandemic period, some countries have imposed several restrictive temporary trade measures. However, restrictive trade policies reduce global supply, leading to higher prices. In fact, the importance of trade in overcoming the pandemic is crucial, as liberalizing trade policies, for instance, through tariff reductions, can instead help reduce the cost of goods and services. That's essential to during the period of post-COVID. And it will be very important in supporting economic recovery. We think that trade and in overall economic integration has no alternative to support our region economic development and increase productivity. Georgia will continue its policies to ensure trade liberalization and trade diversification and promote economic security of the country. During the early stages of the pandemic, supply chains were seriously disrupted. Security and resilience.
I think we're having some problems with the connection, Minister Mikabadze, but I think there's very important points about trade tariffs leading to higher prices and towards diversifications of national economy. So I hope that's something which we can come back to. But I'd like to ask Deputy Minister of Economy, Mr. Sultan Akhmatov of the Kyrgyz Republic, to, I think, pick up the question of challenges and opportunities from the perspective of Kyrgyzstan, please.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to greet and welcome all the participants of our today's event, national focal points, and the leadership of the Asian Development Bank, the entire team of the Asian Development Bank. First of all, I would like to extend my gratitude to the Asian Development Bank for the creation of this platform where we can discuss our existing problems. As you know, this platform has been in existence for 20 years, and it has promoted and it has served as an effective mechanism in the period of emergencies. As we know, and in fact, all the speakers refer to this today, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a number of negative impacts, including reduced economic growth, contraction of trade between and among the countries. And in this regard, I'd like to raise one issue about the following. Using this example of COVID-19, we need to use the Asian Development Bank's platform, CAREC, more effectively to build a mobile and effective mechanism of interaction between the countries, between neighboring countries during such situations. I'd like to give you one example. At the very beginning of the outbreak, we had this issue of food security because certain vital products were diversified across our neighbors. However, with the closure of borders, we started having issues with supplies of these goods. In this connection, I would like to initiate the development of a certain toolkit, something like a food pass. So products that are part of food security that are necessary for the people could be subjected to this initiative. And I think that this initiative is needed. I hope that in the future, of course, such emergencies will not happen, but nevertheless, we have to learn the lessons from our practice, from the practice that we have just had. In this regard, I'd like to say that this can also serve us in the future. We could replicate this experience to the supplies of pharmaceuticals and the development of trade. Digital trade has unlimited opportunities, right? But if the borders are closed, that will still have a very negative impact on the general indicators. I would also like to raise the issue of effective use of water resources. We understand that the problems of climate change are very topical and very relevant at the moment. And the effectiveness and the correct usage of our water resources is very important. In the future, we could create a platform to resolve challenges that some experts project could present themselves already by 2030. And I would like to draw your attention to this aspect too. And of special importance is the need to use this pilot initiative, the economic corridor Bishkek-Almaty, so that we could create some sort of a link where we would be able to move all our cargoes, goods, and people on the basis of our conclusions with our neighbors. We could make other important decisions in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Akhmatov. I think raising the issue about climate is very important on its own, but specifically in the context of water, not just for Central Asia, but for South Asia. And in fact, the region as a whole of CAREC is a crucial one to go forward. And as all of you know, it's a key issue affecting today, not just one for tomorrow. And again, thank you for your excellent point about food security and the shortages that come with border closures. I think that's something to pick up and look at in the future. I'd like to now turn to Mr. Batku Idesh from Mongolia to see what our friends in Ulaanbaatar see as opportunities and challenges as well from CAREC. Thank you.
Honorable Vice President of ADB, Mr. Shishen Chen, and Excellencies, Head of Delegations of CAREC member countries. It's my privilege to attend this event, a very important event organized by the ADB on behalf of the Finance Minister. Unfortunately, due to urgent matter, our Finance Minister could not attend, so I'm here on behalf of him. So I'd like to share some experiences Mongolia went through from the start of the COVID-19 situation and the example of the cooperation between CAREC member countries. Mongolia as a country with a small open economy oriented to mining products export was hit very hard by the COVID-19, and the government put a very big importance for the health of its citizens. So starting from January of this year, we closed our border with the neighbor countries and put a very rigid and control over the cross-border activities. So we took some economic measures to protect our target groups, vulnerable groups, and gave some subsidies for our citizens. And as the result of these government actions, which taken from the early January of this year, our economy shrunk by around 10% by the first quarter. And export and import also fall around 28% and 24% respectively. And state budget revenue also was seen very big loss during this period. So looking at the progress of this situation, our government took an action to actively cooperate with our neighbor, PRC, to facilitate the export of mining products again. So we had a long discussion with Chinese side, and thanks to our Chinese side, we started a Green Gate initiative, temporary regulation to allow crossing the borders, and we could increase our export of coal to China. Last year, in average, around 1,500 trucks of coal export could pass through Chinese border. And due to this COVID-19 situation, starting from January until the April, those number was almost nullified. But starting from May and June, this number started picking up. Now it's we could export around 2,500 trucks per day, which is more than last year's average number. So this could show some good cooperation example between CAREC member countries. And also I'd like to notice that recent visit of His Excellency Minister of Foreign Affairs of China's visit to Mongolia, just a day or 2 days visit. And this shows that we still have to put very big importance between our cooperation among the CAREC member countries and help each other in the during time of hardship. And China's economy is picking up, and we expect that following their economic growth, our Mongolian economy will grow at the same % of GDP next year. Since, as I discussed, our export of coal and other minerals are growing, we expect that the GDP growth will be -1% to -3% at the end of this year. So this dramatic change of economic situation shows that what will be the possible outcome if the CAREC member countries cooperate during this hard time of COVID-19. So I tried to share a little experience of our country, and I hope that our member countries will understand this importance of this cooperation and can reach a good result after this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Idesh, and I think that's a very optimistic and positive report that the truck transportation is in fact up on last year. So that's excellent to know. I'd like to, I will in due course be asking about other regional initiatives and development institutions, and I know some of those on the panel have some expertise and some thoughts about that, but I'd like to stick for the time being with the question of benefits and opportunities. So perhaps Mr. Noor Ahmed, Secretary of the Ministry of Economic Affairs in Pakistan, could come next to talk through how things look from the perspective of Pakistan. Thank you, Mr. Ahmed.
First of all, this is Azaz Dar, the national focal point from Pakistan. And Assalamu alaikum and good evening to all friends and colleagues who are virtually present. And first of all, I would like to thank ADB and Afghanistan, the current chair, for hosting such an important session. And we appreciate participation in this session. COVID indeed has posed massive challenges at all levels, not only at individual and society level, but also at national, regional, and global levels. But as the saying goes, that every adversity brings the best out of us, and every dark cloud has a silver lining. So I believe that real challenge, since we are talking about challenges and opportunities, I believe the real challenge for all of us is to turn these challenges into opportunities by positive thinking. And the real opportunity is to take COVID as a nature's call, wake-up call from our slumbers, so that we explore avenues of improvement, especially in the areas which have been neglected so far, and prioritize our efforts. And needless to say that our efforts should focus on human-centric approaches. Now, if I am to list the challenges and opportunities for focused regional cooperation, there could be a long list, but for the sake of brevity and the paucity of time, I would just talk about 3-4 most important sectors where we think that enhanced cooperation would definitely be needed. And these areas, number one is health itself, and number two, the revival of economy through various measures. And number three would be climate change, and number four would be the use of digital technologies. So first of all, since it is a health sector issue, and COVID itself exposed the vulnerabilities and inadequacies of our health systems, even in the most advanced economies, leave apart developing countries like Pakistan. So, and we all know that WHO has also informed all of us that COVID is going nowhere, and it is going to be there at least for a while. So we need to just do some kind of course correction and adapt ourselves to the changing environment. So in the health sector, my suggestion would be that we should, from the CAREC platform, we should declare public health as a priority sector, which is probably there, but not included in the 6 identified areas. So this can be the 7th, but the most important areas for at least in the future, a couple of years for future. We should capitalize this opportunity of cross-country learning from each other's strengths and address each other's weaknesses and help others through exchange of knowledge and experiences. Third would be that we should look for avenues to increase financing in the health sector, to improve its infrastructure capacities, and especially the vaccine research. China and Pakistan stand out with regard to handling the COVID issue, and very duly recognized by WHO. And I think on bilateral level, China and Pakistan are also collaborating on the vaccine research as well. The second and most important thing, obviously, we know the challenge we know is the revival of economies. Because COVID lockdowns not only disturb social order and norms, but the real challenge has been the damage caused to economy in terms of closure of industries, job losses, reduced incomes, lower trade, restrained tourism, and rising poverty, and the provision of massive stimulus packages announced by East government, and so did Pakistan as well. Therefore, deepening cooperation in these areas, and I would stress especially the trade potential, untapped trade potential, needs to be explored amongst the bloc members. And third, since this disaster hit us in the form, this COVID actually hit us in the form of a disaster, and it gave rise to colossal emergencies causing death and disease. However, these scares stalled the human activities, or at least brought it to such level, such as less road traffic and less air pollution, etc., which allowed nature and planet to heal itself. And there is a lesson which lies for all of us. And we need to focus and look for measures for resilience and mitigation, etc., on a long-term and sustainable basis, so that environment damage is caused in the least manner. And especially since climate change is a cross-border issue and no country alone can handle this. And lastly and fourthly, the use of digital technologies potential is being emphasized throughout this COVID crisis, because restrained human, social, educational, and economic activities pose this challenge. And this led us to realize that vital importance and need for unleashing the digital technology potential. We've been talking about advanced things like big data, AI, and 5G, etc. But this crisis has probably helped us to not only focus, but do something about the universal electronic and internet access and coverage, so that the populations spread all over the countries and all over the region have this instrument to remain not only connected for educational purposes, but things like e-commerce can help in our enhancing our trade, cross-border trades as well. So these are my points for Pakistan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary Aslamdar, for your eloquent. I think these are all points about resilience, mitigation, and sustainability we need to take very seriously. I'd like to go back to Minister Mikabadze from Georgia, whose connection went lost. If you're still there, or if you're nice and clear with the signal, Minister, would you like to resume the conclusion of your comments, please?
Thank you so much, and I'm very sorry for this technical problem. So we are living in virtual world and very much depend on the internet. So as this example showed, the increasing of infrastructure investments is key priority in infrastructure, is in internet communication systems, infrastructure to develop links between countries, trade integration and promotion of knowledge sharing. Those are main challenges that current member states should overcome in post-COVID world. Fighting the virus together and addressing challenges in post-crisis period requires cooperation in different areas, including research and development, ensuring efficient global supply chains, warning of future outbreaks, and building policy coordination mechanisms. Those are main challenges and opportunities where we see the importance of our cooperations. Our call.
Yes, I think we're having some problems again with Georgia. I'm so sorry, Minister. I think while we try to restore those, if we could go to Tajikistan, please. I think we need to keep moving, I'm afraid, because we have also many questions in Pigeonhole. So I'd like to go to Tajikistan, please, for some comments before we can come back. Thank you. Mr. Hikmatullah Zoda, please.
Спасибо. Уважаемый вице-президент Азиатского банка развития.
Thank you very much, esteemed Vice President of the Asian Development Bank, dear moderators, esteemed colleagues and friends. First of all, I would like to greet all of the participants of this high-level meeting. I would like to thank you for this opportunity to communicate once again with all of my colleagues and good friends from the CAREC countries. Today's coronavirus pandemic is a new global challenge to all our countries and all of the humanity. In the world's history, there have already been wars and large-scale deadly epidemics, but it is difficult to remember such a disease that paralyzed the entire planet. In these unique and unprecedented circumstances, the CAREC program is undergoing a serious test of its strength. To minimize losses from the crisis caused by the spread of COVID-19, we need large-scale cooperation at the regional level. The coronavirus pandemic has confirmed the need for unified efforts in responding to the modern challenges, the failure of the policy of isolationism, trade wars, and sanctions. Now, more than ever, a sense of solidarity, mutual support, and general cohesion are important. And the main challenges in the area of regional cooperation in the CAREC region are as follows. First, the ability and willingness to fulfill contractual obligations and commitments for regional supplies. This refers to food, energy resources such as electricity and fuel, and medical supplies. As we all know, many countries in connection with the pandemic have suspended or significantly limited such supplies to their neighbors. Second, the ability to promptly provide assistance to neighbors in conditions when we need help ourselves. Third, the current situation certainly threatens such aspects of regional cooperation as free movement of people, mutual trade in goods and services. However, at the same time, today in our region, there are also significant opportunities for regional cooperation. For example, today, without delays, it is possible to organize special online platforms through which it is possible to exchange experience and share best practices in the area of medical and health response, and through which the world's and the regional leading experts in the CAREC region can provide their colleagues with prompt advisory and methodological assistance. At the same time, it is necessary to use modern technologies to the maximum and provide access to relevant information to as many people as possible. The spread of the coronavirus has resulted in disruptions in international supplies and increased uncertainty in the functioning of the global economy as an integral system. Therefore, I believe that the present is the most suitable time for the formation of regional value chains, as well as common markets for individual goods and services. One of these markets can undoubtedly become a common market for tourism services, where our countries can complement each other, forming a unique regional tourism product. In addition, it will contribute to the development of regional economic corridors as well as improve the region's visibility. Yet another area could be the support for the regional food security and promotion of agricultural production chains development. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Again, some excellent ideas about tourism and more regional cooperation and the benefits. I'd like to turn, we have a delegation from Turkmenistan, from Ashgabat. So I wonder if our friends from Turkmenistan could address the question of the opportunities and benefits, please.
Good afternoon, esteemed colleagues and participants, and the chair of the CAREC program. First of all, I would like to wish all of you, your families, and your loved ones good health. And on behalf of Turkmenistan, I would like to thank all of you for the ongoing interaction and cooperation. And despite the unusual conditions that made us radically reconsider the methods of our work. And of course, nothing can replace personal communication. And at the same time, we managed to quickly adapt to new conditions and successfully preserve available communication channels. And there is no doubt that the COVID-19 pandemic has had social and economic consequences that are seriously affecting the lives of millions of people and the global economy. Most countries are already in deep recession. And the hardest hit countries are those that have the most globally integrated economies, or countries with their most globally integrated value chains, as well as the countries that export intermediate products. I would like to express several proposals regarding stabilization of the regional economy. First of all, CAREC countries should adopt balanced fiscal, monetary, and financial market-related measures to mitigate the economic and social impact of the crisis. In particular, it is possible to subsidize economic sectors on a targeted basis and allocate funds to finance health systems and infrastructure guided by considerations of controlling public expenditures and maintaining financial stability. It is also important to maintain the stability and sustainability of trade and economic relations, transport connectivity between our states. In this regard, it is proposed to work out a unified concept of cooperation aimed at ensuring regular and reliable schemes for mutual supplies and transit traffic in the region. And I actually liked a lot the proposal made by Sultan Ahmedov regarding the development of a toolkit or instrument for harmonization of a set of rules with regard to the food safety, and I believe that it would be quite useful for the CAREC member countries if we have such a toolkit, specifically with regard to the food security issues. Also, in our opinion, the development of information technology, healthcare, and processing industries and other priority sectors of the economy is also important. And we also need to provide support to the transport sector. And we also propose to consider the creation on a multilateral basis of a committee or a panel for overcoming the consequences associated with the impact of the pandemic and the crisis. This committee or a panel can include medical practitioners, scientists, experts, and other members of the medical community from CAREC countries. And we believe that sharing experience in addressing the pandemic-19 crisis could be quite useful for all of the CAREC member countries. And we also need to continue our efforts on environmental protection, healthcare development, and green economy development. For environmental efforts to bear fruit, targeted work is needed at the local and global levels, including through transboundary cooperation. I'm talking about strengthening transboundary ecosystem management measures by tackling the transmission of zoonotic diseases, improving the support of ecosystem functions, and promoting the implementation of multilateral environmental agreements. Some of the proposals I would like to share with you regarding the facilitation and intensification of trade and acceleration of transport, and therefore decrease in the cost of trade. We believe in this regard to apply support to unlock the immense capacity of the region and for the development of the regional interconnectivity. We find it necessary to strengthen the cooperation in the area of sharing the best practices with regard to the trade procedure facilitation. And in cooperation with the organizations of the member countries, we also need to arrange for learning activities to share experiences and lessons, to exchange tax-related information among countries of the CAREC region. We also need to examine the issue of mutual recognition of various export products, and we also need to focus on digitization of the customs and transport procedures. We also need to cooperate in the development of the transboundary and trade and logistics. We need to develop interaction in a multilateral format in order to facilitate the transit of goods. And in conclusion of my speech, I would like to note once again that Turkmenistan attaches great importance to the development of a multifaceted and mutually beneficial partnerships with the CAREC states and is aimed at further improving our cooperation. Thanks for your attention. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Minister Nuragdiev. That's very kind of you to join us with your thoughts. I wonder if Minister Vafayev from Uzbekistan could make some comments. Then I'd like to go back after that to Deputy Minister Najaf to conclude this question. And then we have, I'd like to move on to questions about institutions as well. So Minister Vafayev, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, Honorable Vice President Shiksin Chen, Director General Lipak, distinguished governors, ministers, dear ladies and gentlemen. Let me first of all join speakers thanking the management of ADB and CAREC Secretariat for organizing this discussion and high-level seminar. It is saddening that COVID-19 has brought about considerable human suffering and economic disruption in our countries. And let me express my sincere condolences to all partners who lost their citizens' lives due to the pandemic. Turning to the question which was asked by the moderator, I think one immediate benefit of the COVID pandemic is clear recognition of critical importance which close partnership has in the region. We're very much thankful to all our CAREC countries, partners and governments for very active engagement and support we enjoyed to overcome numerous challenges arising from the current situation and triggered by the pandemic. And especially we appreciate support which we receive from our immediate neighbors in making life of our citizens, life of our people, transit of goods, services, supply of water, and other critical supply of medicines and equipment easier and faster in the current situation. And against that, I believe it is critical to maintain this more efficient and effective communication lines between the governments of CAREC countries to provide quick reaction in similar situation and to unexpected challenges for the population and for economies of our countries. I fully support the views of many delegations that spoke prior to me that in the current situation we should jointly promote international trade and investments and strive for reducing all barriers in this area. Similarly, ensuring increased cooperation on disease prevention and mitigation, information exchange, and cross-border cooperation, and harmonization of pharmaceutical standards became very important these days. And next, I think reviving and fostering economic growth in post-COVID environment and increase of connectivity plays important role. This will require new investments in skills upgrade, especially in the areas of ICT technologies and applications, which became crucial these days and would obviously remain important in the post-pandemic period. Finally, I believe that we should reinforce support to promoting cooperation in all traditional areas which remain important in any situation. It's transport, logistics, tourism, in order to reduce transaction costs for our businesses and for our economies. Let me stop here and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Minister Vafayev. I think the point about a reduction of transaction costs is a very well-made one. We're coming towards the end of this session before we go to the Q&A from Pigeonhole. So I'd like to turn to Deputy Minister Najaf for some brief words, and then I'd like to turn to our delegation from Kazakhstan, please. But Minister Najaf, please.
Thank you very much. Actually, my colleagues mentioned all important issues and opportunities that are facing our region. I would like to emphasize the role of the digitalization, and current pandemic once again shows that nowadays new technologies, innovations, and digitalization is not just a tool or a fancy role. It's one of the pieces of critical infrastructure. And in this regard, I think the countries of the region should cooperate in developing more digital cooperation links in the economic sphere. Actually, digitalization can be enhanced and extended to different sectors, starting from electricity, transportation, transit of goods, economy, trade, investments. Currently, there is also a new term. It's called digital FDI. I think the countries of the region should work on this direction and cooperate with each other. Another issue I think it's very important. It's about attraction of investment into the region, and it can be done through PPP partnerships. And Asian Development Bank and CAREC, I think they are pursuing these initiatives, and I think we have to take more advantage of attracting of foreign investment in infrastructure-related projects, because post-pandemic period, surely there will be some budget constraints, but on the other hand, the governments should fulfill their obligations regarding the infrastructure. And in this regard, I think the better use and more efficient use of private investment and private money to be engaged in the PPP projects infrastructure should be one of the priority directions. And of course, transport, transit, and logistics, we should do everything in order to simplify the procedures to bring everything to more digital platforms that will allow more rapid and fluent, let's say, flow of the goods between the countries. And once again, I would like to thank the organizers of this event, and I wish success to the work of this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to turn to Kazakhstan to ask a very, very important question, which is how can CAREC best learn from and collaborate and cooperate with other regional initiatives and development institutions? So I hope we have Vice Minister Madiev here to tackle that question, please, for us, an important one.
Good afternoon. Unfortunately, Mr. Madiev could not participate. Incomprehensible. Different multilateral initiatives Apologies, interpreter cannot understand the speaker because of the communication problem. We are assessing new opportunities for partnership and coordination. Unfortunately, we must understand that CAREC must remain very topical, and it must use the strengths and the weaknesses that it has acquired over the last 19 years. At present, there are a lot of new regional and financial initiatives that cover the CAREC region. There are opportunities to establish partnerships with them. We have to strengthen the coordination with the existing partners in CAREC. Incomprehensible. At the same time, the new initiative is to consider the role of other new partners in our program. There is a number of important development partners that we could work with. The current situation with the pandemic has shown that we can interact with different development partners to offer mutually beneficial cooperation and learn from each other about how to combat situations that emerge around the globe and in CAREC member countries. So I think that this is a very good opportunity for a mutually beneficial cooperation between development institutes and CAREC. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed, and apologies for the connectivity issues. I think we got almost all of that, so thank you. I have a question that I'd like to ask to VP Chen. The CAREC has fast-tracked policy loans in the past. Is the ADB planning further support along similar lines? VP Chen, please. You'll have to unmute, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I'm trying, yes. Yeah, so thank you for this question. I think this is a question around there. In the first half of the year, ADB provided actually the support, $20 billion there. And this region, as I mentioned, significant efforts have been put there. We had CIPROS, we had emergency assistance, TA assistance, and also disaster management support there. I think this is just the halfway of the pandemic. As we discussed here, lots of challenges in terms of like trade, tourism, investment, and also some information communication. Even during this meeting, we see the infrastructure is also critical as well. And some countries are still facing a lot of individual challenges, some like food security, some area facing the gender problem, and also some like climate change challenges there. So ADB as the leading international regional institution here, we are also considering how we can further support our client countries. So this is a very daunting task here. Here in the ADB, we had a very in-depth discussion how can build on the experiences and the lessons of previous support response, and we can further support our DMCs utilizing the platform like CAREC. Definitely, there will be the fast track approach will be continued before the pandemic fully been controlled. But the way is that we need to be more flexible, more selectivity, more targeting to enhance the efficiency of our support. So I think in terms of this effort, we needed further collaboration between the ADB and our member countries, and also among member countries as well. Like many ministers mentioned, even the neighboring countries, there a lot of efforts, they join hands together will help a lot. Anyway, ADB would like to serve as the platform in this purpose. We will further enhance our support in terms of COVID, as well as beyond the COVID in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, VP Chen. I think it's very important for member states to hear that from the ADB, that the support is going to be long-term as well and accelerated in the current contexts. I think we now go to Pigeonhole and to the Q&A that have been asked by the audience participating. I'll ask some questions. I think member states on this call, if you would like to make a contribution, please also let me know. But I'm going to ask in the first instance to Tajikistan to answer a question, a very important question also we have here. One is how do existing programs and platforms in the CAREC regions help increase cooperation in the region going forward? Tajikistan, please.
Спасибо большое. Очень интересный вопрос.
Thank you very much. This is a very interesting question. And I think that this is the right question to ask, because in reality,
если скажу второе десятилетие,
I don't think I will make a mistake if I say that for the second decade running, we've been implementing our joint CAREC program. CAREC is a unique platform that provides huge opportunities for the development of cooperation between the countries of our region. Its uniqueness is in the fact that the membership of the program does not only include countries with their political commitment to finding the solutions to the problems that hinder their development, that are ready to resolve these issues, but also the membership includes international organizations. First of all, international financial organizations that provide a large volume of financing in the implementation of relevant projects, first and foremost infrastructural projects, as well as international organizations that provide a general political vision in addressing specific problems pertaining to the issues related to the improvement of the social and economic status of the peoples of our region. Let me remind you of the words that were put down based on the results of the 16th Ministerial Conference in the Dushanbe Declaration. It was noted that our collective strength is in our diversity on the one hand and in our unity on the other hand. We have learned to value the mutual complementarity of our interests rather than dwell on our differences and divisions. Therefore, the program has a very broad perspective from the point of view of its development, because in the activities of the program at these annual ministerial conferences, we define midterm and long-term development prospects of the program, and they define joint actions and the realization of our joint common potential through the realization of our cooperation. I could give you the example of the implementation of such initiatives that were related to finding solutions to the problem of transboundary costs of transport, costs of trade. I think that the implementation of the initiative pertaining to the development of economic corridors, so transformation of transport corridors into economic corridors, and now the formation of these corridors by attracting investments, and not only through the implementation of the programs and projects, but also thanks to major financing and investments from the private sector and commercial joint projects that are beneficial for all the participants of the process. All of the above is a wonderful example of the fact that the CAREC program is aimed at the development, at the sustainable development of these regions, of border regions and border territories of the participating countries along these corridors. I would also like to note that all the initiatives undertaken by the countries are being studied very carefully by all the countries and international organizations. And these initiatives lead to action, and their implementation is ensured. I'd like to thank, on behalf of the Republic of Tajikistan, I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank our colleagues from other countries for supporting our initiatives, and these initiatives, with the assistance of international financial organizations, are then implemented in real life. Another advantage, in my opinion, the advantage of our program, is that our program can offer assistance to a political dialogue to develop and adopt joint measures that would compensate the consequences of the events that take place during economic downturns. And I think that this program can not only complement the political and policy dialogue between the countries, but it can also ensure the implementation of the decisions that are being made at the political level from the point of view of overcoming joint difficulties and making joint decisions. It can ensure these agreements materialize. Of course, my time is limited. I could cover a few other aspects, a few other advantages of our program that would strengthen the cooperation. But I think that many of our colleagues know about them. And I think that if there is an opportunity, we will, of course, further elaborate on this topic. We will have a more in-depth discussion of these issues with the Secretariat so as to prepare decisions for the ministerial conference related to improving our activities in the circumstances of new challenges, including the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir. Then I'd like to do the next question, which I'd be grateful if the Minister from Kyrgyzstan could address, which is a question on Pigeonhole. Building up a regional disaster management mechanism and regional risk management capacity is very critical and timely, as has already been mentioned. It would be grateful if we could build consensus on the excellent CAREC platform. Minister Akhmatov, could you please address that question for the audience?
Thank you. We believe that this is a very relevant and topical question. First and foremost, it is related to the fact that there is a major climate change happening around us, and the implementation of a mechanism like this will make it possible for us to plan all our joint actions together in the future, looking at it through the prism of regionalism. Water resources mostly belong to Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, but the users of this entire ecosystem include riparian states. And this is why joint approaches, joint understanding, including monitoring and the management of this area are very important. Yesterday, I think, we had a major landslide at one of our mines, and this is testimony to the fact that we have to draw much more attention to this issue. And with the support of the Asian Development Bank, we're now initiating the implementation of a project of that kind, and I think that this is a very topical initiative. It's very necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I wonder if the delegate from Afghanistan would like to come in on this question too about disaster relief.
Yes. Dabar disaster relief may I comment شما داشته باشید. روین که Professor. No.
At the current time, I don't have any comment on that.
My mistake, Minister, I apologize. In which case, I think we come to the end of this session of Q&A. I'd like to, I think, make a couple of very brief observations before we wrap up. First is I think it's very clear from this session just how important and valuable the CAREC platform is for member states. I think to underline the existing work that has been done over the last few years and how important it is to each individual state that this continues. Second, it seems that there is a very strong appetite for high levels of engagement and of new areas to work on, including digitization, of course, healthcare, which has been put into sharp focus by COVID, and also around other areas to do with climate change mitigation and so on. So I think that there are lots of opportunities for the future going forwards as well, which will carry on through continued dialogue and through continued cooperation. It's been a great pleasure to moderate this session. I wonder if the best person to end this will be DG Lynch. And I'm very grateful again for having been invited. Thank you to all of the participants for your candor in answering questions, giving your opinions. It's very helpful for the ADB to understand your needs, expectations, and directions going forward. So thank you very much for having me. At this point, I'll call on Mr. Lynch, Director General for East Asian Regional Department, for his concluding remarks. Mr. Lynch, please.
Well, thank you, Professor Peter Frankopan, for setting the stage for this high-level session and for being an excellent moderator of the panel discussions. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, today's session has been centered on the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, particularly on the CAREC region, and most importantly, on its people. And as discussed, the gravity of the health crisis is aggravated by severe economic and social impacts, especially among the poor and vulnerable groups. These unprecedented challenges require coordinated responses and innovative solutions towards sustainable recovery. In this context, as everyone agrees, regional cooperation has been more crucial than ever. Bearing resemblance to the ancient Silk Roads, the CAREC region, which links markets from Asia to Europe, is at the center of trade and connectivity. However, strategic location is not enough to solidify the region's leadership role in the global economy. Borrowing from the words of Professor Frankopan in his book, The New Silk Roads, quote, "The story in Asia is about increasing connections, improving collaboration, and deepening cooperation." In this regard, I would like to share 4 takeaways from today's high-level session. First, globalization remains key to a resilient recovery. We need to keep our borders open. Even the temporary measures put in place by CAREC countries, such as priority lanes, tax relief measures, facilitated timely cross-border entry of medical supplies and equipment critical for pandemic response. As the global economic landscape continues to evolve, the CAREC region can recover and prosper by continuing reforms, improving connectivity, and facilitating trade through regional cooperation. Second, there is a need to keep the movement of goods and people safer. Coordinated border measures and regional surveillance can help minimize transboundary health risks along the CAREC corridors. And transparency and harmonized standards will ensure the safe trade and transport of food and thereby enhance food and health security in the CAREC subregion. Third, future pandemics or natural disasters will continue to transcend national boundaries. This calls for better preparedness through coordinated approaches. A scoping study by ADB to be presented at the 19th Ministerial Conference will help develop the CAREC Health Strategy 2030 as an approach to collectively address common health threats and strengthen health security in the region. Similarly, at a recent experts meeting discussed how to reduce CAREC countries' physical and financial vulnerability to natural hazards. The establishment of a regional disaster risk financing facility is a positive step moving forward. And fourth and finally, it is necessary to adapt and evolve to realize new opportunities from the digital economy and supply chain restructuring. Innovation and the use of digital technologies can help restore economic activities through e-commerce and improve the access of small businesses to finance and supply chains. Greater economic diversification will also help mitigate the impact of external shocks and achieve sustainable growth. So in all of these areas, closer partnership with development partners and multilateral institutions is crucial. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, since its inception in 2001, the CAREC program has come a long way in connecting the region and building a new Silk Road. In this journey, ADB will continue to collaborate with member countries and development partners to support CAREC's post-pandemic recovery and achieve shared and sustainable development as envisaged by the CAREC Strategy 2030. So on behalf of ADB, I'd like to thank everyone for their participation in today's session, especially VP Sijin Chen of ADB and Minister Abdul Hadi Argandirwal, Governor for the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, for co-chairing this session. And to all the distinguished representatives from CAREC member countries, thank you for sharing your valuable perspectives. Finally, we are very grateful for those who work behind the scenes to make this virtual session possible: the CAREC Secretariat, the Office of the Secretary, and our IT department. So thank you very much. Stay safe and positive. Today's meeting is now adjourned. Take care.